Hi everyone, it's Noah Beit-Aharon, first-time town meeting representative from Precinct 6, bringing you my summary, thoughts, and hopefully insights about your town meeting. We had a surprisingly exciting and action-packed town meeting on Wednesday, our fourth day, and I can't wait to get into it, but first I want to talk about my approach to opinion and bias, because I've been asked about this and I think it's important. As a general matter, I'm not a man who easily keeps his opinions to himself, and I don't think keeping my opinions out of what is intentionally a subjective summary is really possible. What I try to do instead is to be as fair and honest as I can be, to tell people what I thought about what happened and why, without misrepresenting the people I disagreed with. I obviously have my own opinions and motivations, and I think it's better for me to be clear each time about where I'm coming from and what my opinions are, rather than presenting myself as unopinionated or neutral and having them creep into my summaries anyway. What you get from listening to me is not a neutral report, but my best effort to give you the same view I had from my seat in the auditorium. With that throat clearing out of the way, let's get into it. One of the delights that real politicians always talk about, well, I say real politicians, national politicians always talk about, is finding common ground with people who are usually your opponents, and I got my first taste of that on Wednesday. When Eric Coleman presented plans for a new shade pavilion at Glen Echo Park, a number of representatives expressed concerns that a shade pavilion would become a teenage hangout spot and a place to do vandalism and other unnamed crimes, and therefore require a heightened police presence. Others, including Cynthia Walsh, Teddy Hansen-Dewar, and yours truly, spoke out against this vilification of teenagers as a group, and in favor of providing nice spaces for the whole public to enjoy without having to pay for entry. Right before I spoke, Dave Lurie stood up to say that this was a good project and that while he is a consistent proponent of lower taxes, parks and recreation are exactly the kind of thing we should do with our money since we've already collected it. Dave has been on the opposite side for me on most issues, from the school vote to his approach to special education funding to his many proposals to slash town budgets and services, and it was a pleasure to find myself on the same side as him over something, and to see that article pass 111 to 25. This was followed by a number of sensible housekeeping-type articles that passed with little trouble, including an article to regulate Airbnb and other short-term rentals so that people will have to get permits before they can, for example, rent out their houses as wedding venues or for other big loud parties that disturb the neighborhood and trash the place. Article 42 could have been much the same. A recent state law allows homeowners to build accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, on their lots that are up to 900 square feet in size, or else half the size of the primary residence, whichever is smaller. The idea is to cut through some red tape and make it easier to increase the housing supply in Massachusetts, which is in severe shortage. Accessory dwelling units can be anything from a little freestanding apartment on your lot to converting a finished basement into an in-law suite, and the state law mandates that towns now allow at least one per lot. Article 42 was written to add some specifics about distance from neighboring houses and so on. However, outgoing Finance Committee Chair Vaughn Enochian proposed an amendment to limit the maximum number of ADUs per lot to one, restricting people's ability to create too much new housing without us changing the law again. I wasn't happy about this. Too often, people use phrases like preserving neighborhood character as code for preventing what they view as the great unwashed from moving in next door. That attitude drives up housing prices and forces out working-class people, which is what happened to us in Waltham. I had a job I loved in a nursing home in Waltham, spending every day improving people's lives, but we could not afford to stay in that city on our income. When we moved to Stoughton in 2017, we left a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, which the landlords fixed up a little and then sold for $60,000 above what we paid for our beautiful house here with a big fenced-in yard. When a town doesn't allow for housing growth, it pushes out people who do essential jobs like elder care, teaching, retail work, and more. I spoke out against Mr. Enochian's amendment and was very disappointed when it passed. The big controversy of the night was over Article 44, a provision to amend the town bylaws to regulate sound pollution and noise complaints. The article, as written, would have let people file noise complaints on any loud activity after 7 p.m., which is ludicrously early, and Peter Murphy's amendment to the article to move that time to 8:30 and add a written warning for the first offense before any fines were imposed passed easily. There was a second amendment proposed by Piper Slowinski that would have fixed several other problems with the article. It would have reset the offense count each year, rather than letting you get fined $100 for your second offense, let's say 6 years after your first offense. It would also have set standards for what qualifies as plainly audible or noise injury, rather than leaving that to the discretion of the enforcing officers. Unfortunately, because Piper had sent in her amendment only a day and a half before Wednesday's meeting, rather than the requisite 48 hours in advance, hearing her proposal would have required either a suspension of the rules or for the vote to be pushed to Monday's meeting to comply with a 48-hour rule. The motion to suspend the rules failed to muster the needed 2/3 majority, and then town meeting also turned down the proposal to delay the vote on Article 44 until Monday. Because of this, Piper wasn't even allowed to explain what exactly her amendment was or why she thought it was necessary. I don't know if there's some story behind that, if people don't like her for some reason, or if they were just eager to move on and get to the voting already, but refusing to hear her out was a grave mistake. It left us with an article that was too broadly and poorly worded, that lumped in engine braking noise with lawnmowers and late-night parties, and that could have been used as a tool to call the police on our neighbors just for annoying us. What helped even less was that the proponents of Article 44 were extremely flippant with people's concerns. If you watch the footage of the meeting, at around 2 hours and 38 minutes in, Lindsay Weber points out that the article says you can go to the select board ahead of time to get an exemption if you know you will need one ahead of time. But it doesn't say whether you can get a blanket exemption for certain habitual activities like mowing a lawn late in the summer, or if you have to get a separate exemption for each time you're going to do it. She explains that she mows her parents' lawn after work, since they are not able to do that for themselves, and that it's not uncommon for her to still be out there mowing at 8:30 p.m. Can she get an exemption from the select board that will cover the whole summer, or does she need to keep coming back for a new one every week? It was a reasonable question, but Peter Murphy, who fielded the technical questions, answered extremely flippantly and unhelpfully, and didn't do himself any favors. Stephen Cavey, the chair of the select board, had to step in to reassure Lindsay that she would not be fined for failing to finish mowing her parents' lawn before time ran out. After technical questions, pro and con debate wasn't heated in terms of people shouting at each other, but it was definitely intense, with people arguing strongly on both sides. The thing is, noise pollution is a real problem, and people are right to demand recourse for neighbors or passers-by blaring loud music at all hours or making other disturbing and excessive noises. The trouble is that this is not a good reason to pass a badly written bylaw. We need to take the time to write a good bylaw that everyone can support, that won't be used as a tool to punish each other over petty disagreements. Refusing to consider an amendment that might have fixed some of those problems was a serious mistake, and after pro and con debate had finished, enough people had been convinced of the article's overbroadness that Article 44 failed 62 to 66. There were audible gasps in the auditorium. I think even those of us who were against the article as written thought it was going to pass for sure when the motion to postpone failed. We thought we were going to be stuck with a bad law that encouraged people to call the cops on each other over nonsense. To me, at least, it was a huge relief that the article failed, and I hope it doesn't get reintroduced without serious time and thought being put into how to improve and narrow it down to something we can all get behind. To me, at least, it was a huge relief that the article failed, and I hope it doesn't get reintroduced without serious time and thought being put into how to improve and narrow it down to something we can all get behind. Noise pollution is a real problem, and we deserve laws and lawmakers who take it seriously. That's all for now, and here's hoping that next time I update you, it'll be to say the town meeting is officially over and everything went well.